What's going on, fam? Welcome back to the channel. In this box is a very, very cool pair of football boots. Probably none of you have ever seen them before unless you are watching from the Chinese market, which I appreciate you if you guys are here. These are the Li-Ning Ji-Ying, or Li-Ning Ji-Ying, I believe it's actually pronounced. Threes, so the update to this boot right here, which actually got so much traction on Instagram. You guys were freaking out about what those were. That is the turf model and the second gen. This is the updated model and the FG model. So let's hop straight into it. This, of course, is a massive thank you. This video would not be possible without Hongbo Zhu, who is, and I apologize, brother, if I've pronounced your name wrong, who on Instagram had reached out with a bunch of information on some of the Li-Ning football boots, including their turf models and some of the tech specs and everything. This boot is brand new for 2024, so this is their new generation. These are in a size 9.5 US. Here is the sizing chart. So if we go all the way to the USA 9.5 US, a Euro 43 and a 27 centimeters. So slightly different sizing, as you can see from some of the other major brands in the world, Nike, Adidas, etc. A 9 US is a 42 and a half usually, and then a 27 centimeters, but this one obviously is a little bit larger. These ones fit me, or I assume they'll fit me pretty well given the sizing of the other generation turf model, which fit me in a 9.5 US or a 27 centimeters. All right, here we go. Oh, yes. Oh, cool. So there you can see already the carbon fiber in the forefoot. Wow. These are pretty lightweight, to be honest. Very nice upper. More of a mesh-based synthetic now instead of a fully knit upper, which we'll talk about in just a second. Very, very cool. Snappy sole. Love that. Okay. Wow. And super cool colorway. These guys are rocking it with the colors. I love it. So these are not a special edition Corey version, although I do think that this particular colorway isn't available out inside China. These might be a special edition colorway. I'm not actually sure. He didn't specify, but you can see the Li-Ning or Li-Ning. I don't actually know how it's pronounced. So I've heard a couple people have tried to correct me in the comment section, but because I don't have anyone who I know who speaks Chinese fluently, then I don't. No. Okay, so feeling the padding here in the heel area. We'll get into that in just a second. But have a look at these boots. I think these look really clean. Very streamlined, very soft in the upper material. Let me take the paper out as well. A little bit more in the toe. So these are, this is the update, obviously, from the turf model, which they seem to be coming out with a new generation pretty often. I think the 4th edition is due either next year or like late next year potentially, which is really cool. But there you go. It's pretty dang soft. This is a textile-based mesh synthetic material as opposed to the knit upper, which will actually grab the second generation right here, just so you guys can see. So this obviously is the second generation fully knit, so a completely different construction compared to the first generation, which is very interesting because I think a lot of people, especially in the West, for like Western boot brands, Nike, Adidas, Puma, and everything, for the most part, different generations of the same silo tend to be pretty similar. You never really see like a giant shift in upper material. If it's a knit football boot, it kind of stays knit for a pretty long time. The only kind of exception to that is, let's say, when the Vapor went to a fully knit material this year, but it doesn't feel all that dissimilar. So I am curious to know how the differences will be between the two. Obviously, this is a low top, this is a high top, this is a turf model, this is an FG model. So there's all that different stuff, but they are completely different feeling uppers. So I am curious to see what this third generation, excuse me, of the Ji-Ying actually feels like on feet. I have seen the I have seen a bunch of pictures of the Turf edition, and they are the exact same upper as this. So they have completely shifted the silo over to this textile-based mesh synthetic, which reminds me actually a lot, not quite as sticky maybe, but a very similar material to the Puma Ultra 1.3 and 1.4, which I think was a very popular football boot a couple of years ago. Those were really good. I thought those were one of the better Puma Ultras that have been released. So that's kind of, it's very similar to that material, very thin, very pliable, but not a ton of stretch. So I am curious to see how these will break in, especially here in this area where I tend to have the most issues with breaking in football boots. And then you do have the knit material here through the lacing system as well. Now we get a carbon fiber shank here through the midfoot. As you can see, this material, or I guess the sole plate itself, actually has cutouts there, presumably to save weight, as well as there and there. And then you have the carbon fiber shank that runs basically up through the toe area. So it is quite snappy. That is nuts. That is super, super snappy. Very cool color too as well. It's kind of that iridescent purple, blue, green color, which complements this upper material and color very, very well. Now, if we take the insole out, you get a dual density insole here in this where the black is actually quite stiff. It's a very nice and stiff material, which means that it's going to give you a very grounded sensation. So inside the boot as well, if you can see it through there, you've got actually the opposite of this material. So this actually sits inside these little grooves on the underside of this insole, and that keeps the insole from sliding around all over the place. They do give you a little bit of kind of a cushion pad here in the heel area, but overall, it's actually a decent padded sensation here for the sock liner. Their whole thing is always forward, so that's the motto for the company. And then you have what seems like a reinforced plastic on the inside that go like the midsole material between the carbon fiber or that sandwiches basically the carbon fiber with the sole plate. So we'll throw this back in here as well. From a weight perspective, they feel decently lightweight as well. So I'd imagine because this is more of the speed silo, this is a boot that is going to feel really, really nice on feet. Good suede heel liner as well. This feels very similar to Nike's heels with the Vapor and the GX2. So you're going to get hopefully a pretty good locked in on the heel sensation. And then this knit material just comes up maybe a half a thumb's width or about a thumb's width above the bottom seam of where the construction stops there. And so it'll hopefully give you a little bit more of that seamless feeling on feet. But overall, the Ji-Ying 3 looks and has all of the aspects of a really, really good speed boot, a boot that I think is going to perform very well. I'm super excited to try these on feet. I think these are going to be a great addition to the rotation, particularly if they actually feel pretty good. In a 9.5 US, hoping they feel good from a sizing perspective as well. And then on ball, this has all the features of boots that I'm looking for, at least from a speed boot perspective. If I'm going to pick something that's not leather, it's not going to be, anything. I want a lightweight, responsive football boot. Something like this, something like the Sudo SFS 01 Plus. Those are boots that I really enjoy playing in, and I'm hoping that this is going to fall under that category because I think these are going to be a very, very fun football boot to play in. So none of that really matters if they don't fit, so let's hop into the on-feet portion of the video and talk about fit, sizing, comfort, what these compete with, how they feel in competition with some of the other stuff on the Western market, and then I wish I could say to you guys and decide if you guys should buy them, but you probably can't because the majority of the people watching this don't have access to the Chinese market, and they don't really ship outside of China, unfortunately. So yeah, I'll try to figure that out. Let me see if I can find some links or something if you guys are interested in this. But very, very excited to try these on. Let's hop into it. All right, fam, out in the backyard with the Li-Ning Ji-Ying. Ji-Ying? Li-Ning Ji-Ying? Okay, excuse the pronunciation. Li-Ning Ji-Ying. I'm just gonna keep it there because, well, someone said Lee, L-E-E is how you pronounce it. Anyway, bottom line, I'm actually really excited to try these. Again, totally different construction compared to the previous generation, which is kind of a bummer because I think those would have been really, really fun to try in an FG model. But nevertheless, here we are with the brand new generation, carbon fiber in the forefoot, really, really snappy. And I'm just pumped to try these on because these look very, very tasty, if I do say so myself, on top of the fact that the colorway is absolutely ridiculous. So love that. All right, getting my foot in. These are probably going to fit relatively narrow, but as I get my foot in, okay, yeah, definitely a narrow fit straight out of the box. As you can see, I do have a little bit of extra toe space. That's because these are a 9.5 US, and I went up a half a size because apparently the 9 fits incredibly, incredibly snug, and it's one of those boots, kind of like the Skechers Razor, where you want to go up half a size to get the best possible fit, especially if you're on the wider side. But for me, I think these will fit just fine. There's a little bit of extra space, but as my feet start to kind of splay into them and break into that forefoot, they should be just fine. But to be honest, the midfoot is actually stretching to the shape of my foot pretty well already. That's really nice. Love that. Okay. And let's get this other one on as well. Pretty impressed with how these fit though. Straight out of the box already. They're very comfortable, very thin. They're not as stiff. I know I mentioned the, if I can get my foot in this one. Ooh, goodness. Okay, there we go. I know I mentioned the Ultra 1.3 and 1.4, which this upper definitely reminds me a lot of. That being said, these do have a little bit more kind of knit properties to them, meaning they're a little bit more, they're less plasticky, put it that way. So I don't have an issue with the Puma Ultra 1.3 and 1.4 being plasticky necessarily, but the way that this kind of shapes and molds around all the contours of my feet feel a lot more knit focused than they do synthetic focused. Obviously, synthetics are a great material if you can execute them properly, but these ones, this one kind of feels like a nice hybrid between the two. So it's an interesting feeling football boot just in general. Obviously, as I wiggle my toes, yes, they're a little bit stiff, but as you can see, they're very, very pointy. And it reminds me a lot of the shape of the GX1 in terms of how kind of sleek and narrow this is. It's not too dissimilar from the toe box area of the Tiempo Legend 10 Elite, which, as you guys know, I am not a fan of that football boot, but the shape is okay. It's a little too narrow for me, but I think for a lot of people, they're going to be pretty good. But overall, I would say that these are pretty comfortable football boots, given that they're more on that speed boot kind of category. Now, in comparison to the previous generation, I know I only tried the Turf model, but apparently the upper of the Turf model is the exact same as the upper from the FG model, and they had a very similar carbon fiber shank in them like these ones do, with a pretty aggressive stud pattern as well, and apparently those fit almost identically to the Turf model as well. And I would say that the Turf model with that version 2 Ji-Ying, version 2 was a lot more comfortable for my feet. That being said, I'm sure these will break in pretty well because they do feel pretty seamless just as an upper. So as you can see, here's the full look. They look sick, honestly. This design pattern is very, very clean. It looks great. It looks high-end. It looks high-tech. And that is something that I really am going to enjoy as I start to try and break these in a little bit more. I imagine that these are going to take a little bit of time to break in because they are quite narrow from the midfoot area into the forefoot, but I'm hoping that this material will stretch enough that I can maybe even play with the laces undone for the first, little bit of a session. I'll do a play test in these, no questions, because I do want to make sure that I get a good sense of what these are like, especially in the FG model. The Turf model, a little bit different because I don't really enjoy playing with turf boots all that much unless I'm actually going to go and play like arena soccer or something, or arena football. But on a synthetic pitch. I'll probably do these ones on a regular grass pitch just because I think they're going to be pretty comfy. But yeah, to be expected, this touch on the ball is very barefoot. It feels a lot like that Puma Ultra 1.3 and Ultra 1.4, although it's less sticky. So if I do sort of that kind of thing, you'd expect the sort of the ball to really kind of fizz off of the upper, whereas this one has a little bit of texturing here. There's a tiny little ridges that'll give you a little bit of structure, but the upper in general doesn't actually feel all that it doesn't have that like kind of waxy, sticky sensation. These ones feel much more of just like a flat synthetic material, which is kind of nice in my opinion. And it gives you just a little bit more flexibility in terms of the style of player that really likes this stuff, because there's a lot of players, the uppers that have grip elements can be quite polarizing in a lot of senses. Some people love the Predator and the grip elements, some people hate it, some people love, a GX is probably the prime example, and GX2 in particular. It's either you love it or you hate it. There's not a lot of people that I've met that are sort of like, it's fine, like I'll wear it if I have to, but whatever. Grip elements, especially when it goes across the entire upper, it's a very conscious choice to actually go out and wear something like that. So these ones obviously do not have that, but from a construction perspective, they feel very high quality on my feet. The stud pattern is definitely too aggressive for an AG pitch. I think I will probably play at least one session on AG just to get a sense of, to be able to actually back that claim up. But even just sitting here, if I go up on my toes like this, there are several areas underneath my foot where I can feel each individual stud, which is not an ideal thing if I want to play an AG. Yes, of course, this isn't a grass or an AG surface. This is a backyard AG, not an actual pitch AG, but you get the idea anyway. They're just very aggressive studs, which is going to be excellent for FG surfaces as well. Heel studs don't seem to be too much of an issue as well. There is quite a bit of padding, it feels like, underfoot, and then the heel area feels excellent. I think they have absolutely nailed the heel area. It feels incredibly locked in, incredibly secure, and I don't feel like, yeah, the boots are a little bit tight on my feet, but even then, I feel like they've really done a nice job with the heel area, making it so that if I'm pivoting, if I'm turning direction, sure, maybe there's a little bit of slippage in the forefoot, maybe the synthetic isn't as tight on your feet as it is on my feet, but that heel area is locked the hell in, and that is an awesome, awesome feature of this football boot. But I love the way these feel on feet. I think the upper is really nice. It's very thin, so it's going to give you that awesome barefoot sensation when manipulating the ball. So doing any sort of tight, sharp movements, you're really going to be able to kind of feel every movement that you're making with the ball, which is awesome. That's what I really like. I love a super thin upper. I think it's fun to play in, and I think you just get, it takes me back to playing barefoot in the backyard, right? Like you just get that really little bit of extra ping, which is super fun. So Li-Ning Ji-Ying 3 for the win. These are a great pair of football boots. For those who are watching this who actually have access to the Ji-Ying 3, I think you guys are going to really appreciate this update, especially because it kind of moves a little bit more from a little bit more plush touch on the second generation with the knit base, and now we're moving into the synthetic base with a pretty thin synthetic. It's definitely more speed boot focused and very much more aggressive focused, as opposed to maybe can kind of do both, but the upper feels a little bit more GX2, Magista Obra 2 kind of vibe, as opposed to now it's like hardcore. This feels like a thinner version of the F50, the Puma Ultra 1.3, 1.4, which were some of the best speed boots that Puma's ever come out with, in my opinion, because they were just so focused, built, and lightweight. These feel a lot like that in some ways, with some really tasteful upgrades with the carbon fiber in the forefoot, which you can definitely feel how springy that is. It reminds me a lot of the Carbitex out of the Speedflow. And overall, I think if they brought these to the US market or the Western market, you would find that it is an absolute sensational football boot that would perform really well compared to other speed boots on the market. So stay tuned. These might end up in Boot of the Year of 2024. I don't know yet, but they were definitely deserving of this review as well as a playtest and future 1-month review. So that's going to wrap up today's video on the Li-Ning Ji-Ying 3. and in FG, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you do and you are interested in more football boots like this that are different and maybe aren't part of the Western market and that aren't really available, but they're fun to talk about, let me know down in the comment section below what other brands you guys want to see from the Asian markets, from the Eastern European markets. What do you guys want to see? Maybe even the South American markets. That would be really cool to find some boots from down there that I have never actually reviewed before and no one's ever heard of before. That would be really cool. So always keen to look at what people in the football boot industry are doing with technology that other people in the mainstream don't actually know about, which is super sick. As always, be awesome. Take care, guys. I'll see you in the next video.